Alright, the assassin baby Brandon Moreno returns this weekend after closing out that quadrilogy with Davis and Figueiredo. This is now his chance to be the champion. Like, all of his other title fights and all flyweight title fights really for the past 4 years involved Brandon Moreno and Davis and Figueiredo. Like, this is the first time that we're seeing Brandon Moreno kind of step up against new blood as a champion. Yes, I know he fought Kai Kara-France last year, but still, this just feels different. This is him as the champion. We're going to see how he does. And this is an interesting backstory to this fight. Of course, we know Alexandre Pantoja beating Brandon Moreno twice already, and I'm going to get into that later. But I think this fight might be fight of the year, to be honest. This is going to be a banger, I think, and hopefully I don't eat my words, but we're going to have to see. Guys, welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. We're trying to hit 20K by the end of the year, so if you guys could just help chip in, add to that subscriber count, I'd be very appreciative of that. And yeah, this whole week we're doing UFC 290. I'm going to be posting a Robert Whittaker vs. Dricus du Plessis prediction video coming soon. Yesterday, I posted my prediction for Alexander Volkanovski vs. Yair Rodriguez, and you guys might be very surprised about my prediction, so tune in for that video. Thank you guys for watching, and let's just get into this co-main event. All right, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja 2. Now, like I said, these two have fought already twice. Obviously, this is the second one, but the first one we all know happened on the Ultimate Fighter where Brandon Moreno lost. Then Brandon Moreno gets signed to the UFC, kind of has some success, kind of iffy start. Then he fights Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja dominates that 3-round fight, and Brandon Moreno gets cut from the UFC because of that performance. And Pantoja just was super dominant. Now, this is the first time for him fighting for the title. He was on his way, but as we know, Davis and Figueiredo did beat him, so we've seen that Pantoja is beatable. But Brandon Moreno obviously has lost now twice to him, finished once. But the thing to keep in mind is that Brandon Moreno is not the same fighter that he was all those years ago. He has improved. He has become a champion. He's been in and out of the UFC since then. A lot has happened since that performance. That was at this point, what, 6 years ago? So I think we could expect a different Brandon Moreno, and I think this matchup just results in fireworks. Both guys are very aggressive. Both guys like to swing in the pocket. Pantoja opens up like crazy every single time he fights. If you look at the Alex Perez fight, he submitted him within a minute. All right, I'm dragging it. It wasn't a minute. It was 2 minutes, but still, guys, it was pretty quick. He's super aggressive, and that's sometimes his downfall. He sometimes can gas out, and this is what's going to be a little bit interesting is Brandon Moreno has gone 5 rounds before. We saw it against, Davis and Figueiredo in the third fight. In the first fight, he's gone 5 rounds before. Pantoja hasn't, and Pantoja is used to fighting 3-rounders where he usually kind of gets tired near the end of those rounds, so 10 more minutes adding on to it, I think it will be a big factor going into this fight. Now, will it even matter? We're gonna find out in this video, but I genuinely think that this is going to be a really good fight. I would not be surprised if this is a fight of the year candidate type of thing, but I want to talk about, as always, what I think their strategy should be, and then I'm going to move on to my prediction and how I think the fight's going to happen. So for Alexandre Pantoja, I just think he needs to be himself a little bit. His aggressive style is what gives him a lot of success. It throws a lot of people off. Kind of reminds me of Hamzat in that way, and that might sound like a weird comparison, but Hamzat's very similar, comes out very aggressive, and you always wonder, what happens if he gets those later rounds? Will he gas out? Hamzat in that Gilbert Burns fight was very measured, but when you look at the Kevin Holland fight, he was absolutely so aggressive, just trying everything he could to get that first round finish, and Pantoja's the same way. And luckily for both of them, they're very good that they can get those first round finishes. So that's what makes Pantoja extremely difficult. And we saw in that first Brandon Moreno fight, he dominated him in that first round. He really hurt him with a jab, shattered Brandon Moreno's nose. It's not a good look for Brandon Moreno that fight. It was a really brutal performance from Alexandre Pantoja. But in that last round, in the last few minutes, you see Brandon Moreno kind of saying hey, let's go, and Pantoja definitely taking a back step. And you have to wonder, what if there was 10 more minutes of that fight? It did go to a decision. Could Brandon Moreno have picked up those last 2 rounds, maybe even done a little bit better in that third round, and perhaps win a super close decision? Those are all what ifs, but I want to talk about who I think is going to win the fight. And like I said, I think Pantoja just has to keep his aggressive self, but I think he has to be a little bit more measured, especially with the strength, especially with the submissions, because Brandon Moreno is a hard guy to submit. We saw, Davis and Figueiredo had a really good guillotine attempt in that 4th fight. Obviously, he didn't get that guillotine, but he's a hard guy to finish, and yes, I know Pantoja has a really good ground game, but so does Davis and Figueiredo. None of these guys you can sleep on the ground. So I think it's kind of proven that Brandon Moreno has good enough jiu-jitsu defense to not get submitted unless he gets rocked or caught in a scramble or something like that. But I don't think, Pantoja is going to be able to, get out there, blitz out, absolutely just dominate Brandon Moreno, because, that hasn't happened twice already, let's be honest. He did dominate him across 3 rounds, but he never got the finish, except for, the Ultimate Fighter, but that's different. So I think Brandon Moreno's jiu-jitsu is good enough that I think he'll be able to not get submitted. Obviously, maybe he gets caught. Obviously, he could get submitted, but assuming everything's normal, assuming he doesn't just get caught in a scramble or get knocked down or something or is hurt, I think we're going to see, Brandon Moreno not really get finished via submission. What I'm more worried about is TKO, because Pantoja is extremely aggressive. Usually his opponents are behind the cage, and when your back is against the cage against Alexandre Pantoja, you're in trouble, because he's going to unload. It doesn't matter what you throw at him. The guy's a very intimidating guy to fight. He just seems like nothing bothers him in there. Like I said, I think keep the aggression, try to mix it up a little bit, try to shoot your own takedown, and it's just difficult. You got to pace yourself a little bit better. Hopefully his cardio is good enough to be so aggressive aggressive across 5 rounds, because if that's the case, man, this guy might be the greatest fighter on the planet. But we're gonna have to see. He usually gasses out later on, and I think it'll be interesting, and I'm gonna talk about that when I get to my prediction side. And for Brandon Moreno, I think he's gonna have to fight a little bit differently than normal. I do like the fact that in his last fight with Deiveson Figueiredo, he was a lot more aggressive with the wrestling, and I think perhaps he could just try to wrestle Pantoja early on, try to control him, maybe, stay in side control, half guard, and just, kind of control him, get some little shots across, just, to lower the gas tank of Pantoja. Like, I think Brandon Moreno's mission here is, hey, how fast can I get that gas tank lowered? Like, and even if the wrestling isn't successful, make sure you're hanging on him, make sure it's taxing, make sure he's really defending those takedowns, because Brandon Moreno for sure has the cardio advantage. So I think if it goes to those later rounds, I think Brandon Moreno will definitely have a big advantage. So I think the goal for him is to get him tired soon, try to get it to those later rounds and be very aggressive there, and survive the early rounds, especially the beginning of that first round, because Pantoja is going to come at you like crazy. And Brandon Moreno is a guy which worries me, is that he does like to get in brawls. We saw in, the Deiveson Figueiredo fight, especially in that third one, he got frustrated. Kind of seemed like he was just throwing in there. He can't get frustrated in this matchup. He has to be very calm and know, hey, this is part of the game plan. I might lose this first round because he's so aggressive, but it'll pay dividends later on when I'm hitting his body, when I'm wrestling him, when I'm throwing little shots here and there. So I think Brandon Moreno, stay calm, stay composed. Remember, hey, that you might lose that first round, but try to be very smart with it. Don't go inside the pocket and just, swing away with Pantoja. You don't want to do that, because Pantoja will eat shots all the time. And we saw on multiple occasions Pantoja was able to hurt Brandon Moreno. And I think for Brandon Moreno, in terms of the feet, I think he's really got to, jab, keep it moving, try to stay on the outside of the octagon. Don't let your back go against the cage, because then Pantoja is going to go crazy on you. And it's hard to do, because Pantoja will go run at you like a madman. But he's got to stay composed. Really use the jab, use the 1-2, mix in the wrestling, especially early on, kind of like how we did in that last Deiveson Figueiredo fight. And when he feels like he's getting pressured, he's got to really go for those takedowns, really break the action of Pantoja. Use, your jabs and, your wrestling. Use that to break the combinations of Pantoja. Let him be hesitant to throw. Let him be hesitant to go forward. You're going to have to get some respect from Pantoja, and we're going to see if Brandon Moreno is able to do that, because not a lot of people are. Even Figueiredo, to a certain extent, really wasn't able to get the respect of Pantoja. I mean, eventually, Deiveson, I think, had the best performance against Pantoja because he was able to back him up, and if Brandon Moreno can back him up, that's even better. But at the very least, you don't want your back on the octagon. And like I said, yes, one could say, hey, Pantoja is 2-0 against Moreno, but at the end of the day, this is a fight. Anything could happen, and both guys have changed a lot, and you got to imagine the confidence of Brandon Moreno is probably at another level. So I'm going to talk about now who I think is going to win. My prediction is Alexandre Pantoja. Guys, I don't know. I think this is a little bit closer than some people are giving it credit for. I could see a scenario where, Brandon Moreno really picks him apart, really is technical with it, wins the later rounds, and maybe steals the decision. However, I just think that Pantoja will do so much damage early on, and even when he's tired in those 4th and 5th rounds, to make those rounds close. And what I mean by that is, blood on the face of Brandon Moreno, cuts here and there. Like, I think we're going to see, Pantoja be able to, take a breather and still do some damage with that jab. And I don't like the fact, like I said, Brandon Moreno sometimes just swings in the pocket when he's frustrated. We saw, like I said, with Deiveson Figueiredo, he did this. Another factor you got to consider is Pantoja was really destroying those legs of Brandon Moreno, which we saw Deiveson Figueiredo do in that third fight about a year ago. Absolutely destroying Moreno's legs, and I expect that to happen again. And also another thing is, I say, hey, Brandon Moreno could, maybe camp in half guard, side control, and control him there. That would be an ideal situation, but Pantoja, just like Yair Rodriguez, which I said in yesterday's video, both guys are extremely frustrating to keep on the ground, because they're going to throw elbows, hammer fists, all from the back, throw up submissions. You got to be constantly watching. I don't think he's going to be able to submit Brandon Moreno. I could be wrong, because his ground game is very good. There was a time where I was certain Michael Chandler wouldn't be submitted by Dustin Poirier, but he did, and somehow didn't get submitted by Charles Oliveira. So you never know, and you don't want to take my word for it, but I think most likely it's going to a decision. I think we're going to see Brandon Moreno maybe win those 4th and 5th rounds, even though I think they will be close. I think he'll win those 4th and 5th rounds, especially that 5th round. However, like I said, I just think there's a chance that this is like a 49-46 decision or a 48-47, whatever. Yeah, I just think Pantoja is going to do really good, but I think Brandon Moreno has to go into this saying, hey, I want to really tax that cardio of Pantoja, really take him to the later rounds and really drown him there. Judging from how Pantoja looks in those third rounds, especially even that last Brandon Moreno fight, I feel like maybe Brandon could finish him in the 5th round, as crazy as it sounds, because Pantoja just uses so much energy. It is crazy, but I think this is going to be a banger fight. I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I think tomorrow, I'm not 100%, but maybe tomorrow I'm going to be dropping my Whitaker vs. Dricus du Plessis video, as well as a reaction to the press conference. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to cover for Fight Week. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Please share the video. I'm trying to hit 20K by the end of the year, so let me know in the comment section who do you guys think is going to win this fight and how, and I'll see you guys in the next one.